So we're at the Cliff House, a San Francisco institution, which looked nothing like this at the time your novel takes place, but was nevertheless existing.
I think it looked more like a sort of a diner on stilts at the time. I think the beautiful version had burned down.
It is my understanding that the inspiration for the novel was based on something that happened to you in real life, or it's based on a family story, sort of.
It is. I'll be sly.
Tell our viewers.
I would tell our viewers. I'll be a little sly because it's a family story that everyone says is crazy and isn't to be believed. But it was an elderly relative of mine said to me once that in the early 50s in rural Kentucky, where she was living, that a family friend took her on a drive in the country and stopped the car and turned to her and said, I was your husband's lover in the war as a man, and I've been his lover for years here in Kentucky, and I want to leave with him, and I need you to help me, which is just an incredibly impossible thing for her to hear. And she just said, get out of here. And she told me later that she really regretted it, based on her later marriage. But also, I think she said she could not imagine at the time how a woman could raise two sons by herself. In addition to just the insanity of what he was telling her, there was also the panic of she had no other way out. And so it was kind of what interested me was the sort of the drama of that kind of story, but also how a woman would be so trapped that she might go along with this, that she might, what would make her say no and what would make her say yes.
Right.
Was
and
the idea.
When did you hear that story?
Might be 10 years ago. Why?
And well, I'm wondering if it was did you know immediately that there was something you wanted to write about, or was it kind of in the perhaps file, or?
Yeah, well, at first I wanted to tell everyone in my family because it was just a wild story no one had heard before.
Right.
And everyone said, she's crazy, stop it. This is not the first time she's told this story. And then I actually made it into a short story. Years ago, I wrote it, a short story called The Ballad of Pearly Cook, which is the main character's name. And it was way too long and too crammed with details, and it was sort of failed as a short story. So I put it away. And then after Max Tivoli, I picked it up again because I wanted to write something that was kind of more domestic and less 60 years of fantastic character.
Right.
And I thought, well, it's a book. It was too big for the little story, and it was too much drama for the story. So I tried it again.
And what made you move it to 50th San Francisco?
Well, I wanted to hide my relative a little bit. I just don't think my family would be wild about it. And I also
Your
thought,
relative Donald Rumsfeld.
That's right. For legal reasons. You know what? I really didn't think I could do the voice of a rural Kentucky housewife in the 50s. Because I was writing it in first person, I decided it had to be told from her point of view, and I thought, I'm just not going to pull that off. You know, I can do a man aging backwards, but an ordinary woman in Kentucky, forget it. I took her to San Francisco because I could do the research here, and because I could imagine it better.
And did you try different time periods? I mean, did you think about, oh, I could put this in the 20s, oh, I could put this in the 70s?
I did in the 70s, oh my god. It was, I tried it a little bit. This will sound very subtle. It started out in 1952, and I moved it after 6 months of work to 53.
This is your second novel about San Francisco in the past. And I'm wondering what the draw is of that to you.
Well, I think it's all the costumes and sets are already made for you. If you can just find them, if you go back in the research. At least in the Confessions of Max Tivoli, there was loads of legends and characters in San Francisco that you could just lift out of there. And for the 50s, it was a little harder because all the big stuff happens in like 54, 55 in North Beach. You know, it's the time of Howl and sort of freeway revolts and the beat scene. But in '53, when the novel's set, it's not really happening. So I had to read the newspaper every day in order to find out what was really going on in San Francisco. And it was a super weird experience because you read the newspaper, and I guess just like today, on the front page it says, "End of the world comes tomorrow. Start panicking, and there'll be a sale." You know, start getting ready for New Year's now. You know, just at the same time. And
right.
So it was just like reading the paper today.
For me, the same thing that's attractive about living here is the same thing that's attractive about setting fiction here. I mean, it's a city where there's everything going on. It has its own rich history and also its own very strong amnesia about history.
Yeah.
And that it's a city so many people come to. Do you feel intimidated by San Francisco literary history?
No. I guess I was going to try to say yes. It's so different, I guess, from what I'm working on, because I think of it as being noirish. What in particular?
I don't know. I sometimes feel like I'm an uptight San Francisco novelist, you know, and that there are not very many of us, and that they're more kind of wild and free, Mark Twain kind of beat. Noir, all that stuff that's kind of unshackled and crazy.
Well, we're here having a quarter of a whiskey.
Yes, that's right. We've had a sip and a half of whiskey before 5. What's wilder than that?
Yeah, it is true when you're like Robert Louis Stevenson had the best years of his life here, or whatever it was, 3 months, or whatever he's been here.
Jack London.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm intimidated.
The sunset where the novel takes place was all these houses built for veterans returning home that were supposed to be affordable, which they still in San Francisco are relatively affordable.
Yeah.
And but they don't have any of the feel of kind of bungalows in Los Angeles or anything. It's the sunset can be a kind of a lonely and creepy place.
It's which
is why I like
lonely.
it.
Yeah. Well, Playland by the Sea, which we're just a couple blocks from, is unfortunately completely gone. So we don't have a shot of it for you. I think behind me is something related to it. What used to be the Sutro Baths is now, it just looks like cliffs, but it was huge glass-covered swimming pools. It had like salt pools and warm pools and cold pools. And it was not connected to, but related to the old Playland by the Sea, which was roller coasters and a number of like hot tamale places and like a fun house and something very alarming where you could just get in a boat and go down a chute and you would hit the water and go skidding across. And it's really hard to imagine now because now it's just the end of Golden Gate Park and it's beautiful in the ocean and you can have a bonfire and it seems like California living, but I kind of like the idea that you could go down here and have something to do. Another place in the book is the St. Francis Hotel in the lobby, which used to be, I think, a little more open. It was one of those great hotels where they would they washed their change every night from the restaurant and things, and then they would do a gleaming change in the morning. Sort of a fancy place, but I don't know very much more about it than that. Were you part of this? Auctioning off a name in your novel?
Yes.
For the First Amendment Project. And mine was Dr. David Hussey won. And so I made it.
Congratulations, Dr. Hussey.
Thank you. I was grateful to get that name because you can do anything with that.
Absolutely.
So I made it Hussey's Creamery. Thank you, Dr. Hussey. And he gave to a good cause for that.
Yes. The First Amendment Project.
Yeah, the First Amendment Project. It's gone now, the soda fountain, so I based it somewhat on the St. Francis fountain on 24th Street, where I used to live. But you can sort of base it on anything in your head. I read a lot about drinks, and so my favorite one is the Suicide, where it's something I probably would have ordered at 12, which is just like part of everything. Disgusting. I mean, basically...
Right, every kind of soda.
Yeah.
It's kind of the non-alcoholic Long Island iced tea.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.